Welcome back to NV Fine Art Studio. I'm Nina and today we will be continuing our discussion about washes. In the last episode we learned how to do a flat wash, how to ensure it's seamless, it doesn't have unwanted sharp edges in the middle of it, it's not overworked, and it doesn't jump from one tonal value to another. If you missed this tutorial, I would highly recommend watching it before this video. The link will be here and in the description below. Today we will be learning about the gradient, how to do it and when to apply it. If you think you want to practice what we discussed today on a full-scale painting, I welcome you to my Patreon. I've just done this seascape painting, which gives an excellent opportunity to practice washes. The sky is a gradient, the sea is a gradient, the wet sand, the rocks, everything in this painting is a gradient. And the most interesting part, every gradient in this painting is executed by applying different techniques. So, by painting along with me, you will not just practice doing a common gradient, you will see multiple ways to achieve it. I'm sure you will have lots of fun doing this. The link will be here and in the description down below. Watercolor Where to Begin series is mostly for those who are recent to this, but even if you have experience, gradient wash is still not an easy thing to do in a painting. Let's be very thorough and go through all the steps of how to do a gradient very slowly. Just to clarify, gradient wash is a wash that changes its tonal value, in other words, its darkness or its saturation in a smooth manner. You can have a single color gradient or multicolor. You can also have different directions of this transition: linear, axial, circular, reflective, multi-line, and so on. I don't want to bombard you with too much verbal information at once, so let's start with the most simple and common gradient, single color line. The biggest problem for beginners when they start working with gradients is to understand how color can change the tonal value. To simplify your work, I'm going to insert a black and white version of this video next to the color, so you can understand what darkness means in color. To create a successful gradient, you need to have a clear idea in your mind from the start of values you will be using. You need to envision the tonal value you start with and the tonal value you finish with. If you are still learning tonal values, the grayscale tool is very handy in this instance.
I want to start at tonal value 2 and progress to tonal value 5. So let's start with tonal value 2. It is a very light tonal value, so there is plenty of water in my mix and a little bit of color. Let's try this. We're making first 2 strokes. Now we need to start increasing the tonal value. So I'm adding only paint to the mix. I'm hoping it's value number 3. Now we need to progress to even stronger value, so adding more paint to the mix, no water. Touching the previous bead and making few more strokes. And I'm hoping that it's value number 4. So getting even darker, and I'm hoping that this is value number 5. So this is our gradient. Let's check if we are right. And let's put it against the grayscale tool. So the first line looks like it's value number 2. The second line looks like the value number 3. The third line looks like the value number 4. And the fourth line looks like the value number 5. So we are right. Well done.
It's not an easy task to get the values correct. You need to train your eye to see the values in color. I would highly recommend doing this exercise over and over again until you don't even think about what value number this is, you just know it.
Now let's do a multicolor linear gradient. The principle is exactly the same. We're going to start with a lighter value. Doing a few strokes, and I'm using yellow ochre for this wash. Now I'm not adding any water, I'm just adding a little bit of paint. I decided to do alizarin crimson. Few more strokes touching the previous bead, continuing the wash. Again, no water, just paint. And as you can see, the mixture is getting a little bit thicker. Again, touching the previous bead and doing few more strokes. more paint, thicker mixture and darker mixture. One more stroke. Let's do much darker mixture. Let's add neutral tint to it. Thicker mixture and darker mixture. Doesn't look dark enough, so let's add more paint to it. There is no space, so I'm just going up with this mixture, and this is how you can create a gradient as well. You can just add a darker mixture to the bottom of existing wash. This is a very thick mixture now, and painting wet on wet, going up, making the strokes lighter. To make sure it blends nicely, you can actually spray it with spray bottle. Adding just a little bit of moisture on top of the existing wash will help with the gravity to create a smoother transition from value to value, from color to color. Now I want to show you how you can achieve the smoothest gradient of all. I'm going to use whatever I have on the palette, just adding a little bit of water to make sure that it's a lighter value. Now I'm making a flat wash. So this is a square of flat wash in value approximately 2 or 3. Now I'm adding a very dark value on top of that. I'm starting at the bottom and traveling upwards, like that. Now I'm going to add an even darker value to the bottom, like that, and just a little bit of the top, just to pretend that there is something in there. So that's the bottom, and a few brush strokes at the top, like that. It will represent an object in the distance. Now the trickiest part. First I need to wash the brush to make sure that there is not that much paint on it. Next I'm loading the brush with water and applying this water to the top of the wash, right where the light value is. And if you think the water is not running down quickly enough, you can always add a few more drops of water or just help with the brush to get it down quicker, like that. If you like the gradient but it's still wet and it's still running down, it's probably best idea to use a hairdryer to dry it at this stage. I really like this technique. I think it's very nice, smooth and creamy, and it's almost impossible to achieve it with the brush.
Now let's talk about where we can use it. The most common utilization for a gradient is to depict different dimensions, to add more depth to your painting.
For example, in my painting Blue Rock Lake, I used gradient wash to paint the lake. I started from a very weak warm mixture near the horizon, progressed to a slightly darker, cooler tone in the middle ground, and the very foreground was very cool and dark in comparison to the tonal value near the horizon line. As a result, we have a very strong sense of depth. The surface in the distance appears to be flat, and the closer it is to us, the more vertical it appears. It is like we are looking down on the very foreground. This is completely consistent with the rules of perspective.
Another good opportunity to add gradient to your painting is when you want to portray a different time of day or atmosphere.
For example, in my painting Flatiron Building, I wanted to achieve a sense of low winter sun shining through a thick, hazy snowstorm. To do so, it was critical to implement a gradient wash to the sky. I started with a very fluid, warm hue mixture at the top of the sky. Then I slowly progressed to a slightly cooler and darker mixture in the middle of the sky. As soon as I neared the horizon line, I started to apply much darker and thicker mixture. As a result, we have this beautiful sense of snowstorm and thick atmosphere in the sky, but at the same time it is cheered by the golden pink disarray of sun. We can almost see the air flowing in this painting.
Also, gradients are great for conveying different sentiments and emotions.
This is my most recent painting surf beach in Turkey, Australia. Before painting this in the studio for my patrons on Patreon as a demonstration, I did a sketch in the open air. I was touched by the happiness and joy that the sun, sand and sea awakens in people. I wanted to embody this in my painting. The glowing sandstone rock, the rushing waves, the almost clear blue sky. I felt so blessed being there at that moment. I started my painting on location with the warm hue for the sandstone, moved to the sky and then to the sea and the beach. All of these elements were painted in the form of gradients. I tried to make these gradients as contrasting as possible to emphasize the feeling of bright sun and joyful atmosphere. When I painted in the studio, I made sure that I implemented all what I soaked in on location, but I did differentiate the ways I applied the gradient wash, just to expand on what we learned today.
All the examples that I bring in these tutorials are available as full-time demonstrations on Patreon. So if you want to learn more or just paint along, please find me there. All the links are in the description down below. So we talked about how to do the gradient, where to use it. But before we finish, I want to quickly show you the most common mistake I see beginners make.
Let's pretend that we are painting a seascape. We will be starting with the sky, with a gradient wash for the sky. So first we're gonna do a very light watery mixture for the top of the sky. Let's start with a alizarin crimson, for example, with a little bit of yellow ochre, just to add the glow to the sky. So this mixture needs to be really watery. A few strokes for the sky. This mixture is quite watery, so it creates a very nice bead. Now we're not adding any water, just paint to increase the value, tonal value. Few more strokes, increasing the value again. No water added to the mixture. Few strokes again. We're very near the horizon line. Now we need to get a little bit darker than that to create a proper gradient wash. So adding more paint to the mixture and applying it to the horizon line from both sides. Like that. And lifting it up into the sky, just to make a smooth transition. This is all perfect, there are no mistakes here. But now, when we start painting the sea, we start with a very dark, thick mixture for the sea near the horizon line. So this mixture is approximately cream consistency. So there are 70% of paint and only 30% of water. So we start with a line for the sea near the horizon. I'm gonna pause here for a second and let you think what the problem might be. I'm going to give you a little hint. Here's the little white spot here. This is the indication of the dry brush mark. On one hand, this is exactly what we want to do to create an effect of surf in the distance. But on the other hand, the mixture that we are painting with is dry. When you do gradient washes, the biggest problem is that you need time for mixing in between the brush strokes. It means we need to manage the edges carefully. We always have to keep in mind how wet is the surface, how watery is the mixture. If we don't think about it, here's what happens. The sharp edge between the layers. This is the worst thing in gradients. As soon as you see this, it's no longer a gradient, it's zebra stripes. Let me show you how to avoid this. After you finished with the sky, spray the area with the spray bottle and keep mixing as long as you want. Remember, a spray bottle is your best friend in watercolor. There is nothing that keeps your painting alive like a spray bottle. If you worry about uncontrolled soft edge that might form near the horizon, don't. It can always be fixed later or turned into a distant mountain.
If you liked today's video and want to see more, please like, subscribe and hit that notification button so you don't miss it. Also, if you have any questions about the topic, the process or the tools I am using, please let me know in the comment section. I'll be happy to help. This is all for today. Happy painting! Until my next video. Bye!